Hi everyone, we are so lucky to have Ms. Helm here with us. Yesterday you asked the question, what is the difference between a theme, a thematic statement, and a thesis? So Ms. Helm is here to explain it to us.
Okay, Ms. Burdess is going to share some notes with you. The one that I have here that I shared with my kids, it's notes on theme or basis for thematic statements in Carl. So I'm going to show you this first, and then we're going to break it down. So the handout is a theme of a piece of fiction. It's its controlling idea or central insight. So you have to ignore my spelling, please. Central insight. Your junior high definition of theme was like, what's the moral of the story type of thing, but you've graduated to something a little bit more complex and sophisticated now. So it's the controlling idea or the central insight. Sometimes it's called the universal truth. Okay, so that's going to be a statement where no matter who you are, no matter what your socioeconomic background, no matter what your ethnicity, you can identify with the controlling idea. You can identify with the universal truth.
And that is your thematic statement.
And that's going to be your thematic statement. So you have to write it general enough that it is applicable across the board. It's kind of tricky because it has to be general enough to be understood and identified with universally, but it has to be specific enough to a piece of literature. So that's where it gets a little bit confusing. So I have you can read over this handout on your own. The best handout I have is this one that Ms. Burdess is going to share you, where I don't know if you can zoom in on it, where you have the topic, which is going to be given to you by the instructor or examiner. For example, and this is straight from a diploma exam. Discuss the idea developed by the text creator of your chosen text about the ways in which an individual's resilience is shaped by reconciliation. So basically, your easy peasy one-word theme is resilience shaped by reconciliation, okay? Now you have to try to find a thematic statement. Let's use Indian horse, because this general theme is going to look different depending on what piece of text. For example, what other pieces of literature have you studied so far?
Indian horse is it, but we did the witness blanket.
Okay.
And we also did the sharing circle.
Okay, so if you were, is a witness blanket a short story?
Witness blanket is a documentary.
Okay, so if you were to write a thematic statement using this with the witness blanket, it would be different than the one that you would write for Indian horse. Same theme, different thematic statement. I used to do a general theme on legacy with my grade 11s, and I used to use, the legacy left behind. It used to be Lance Armstrong, when he wasn't like thrown off the pedestal and charged for all that drug stuff. He was a really positive person, leaving a really positive legacy. And then you have Macbeth. Once you start studying Macbeth, leaves a negative legacy. Same theme, different thematic statement, because different pieces of literature discuss a general theme in different ways. Which is why on diploma exams you're going to have a general theme, because what they want you to do is they want you to pick out of all the pieces of literature that you've studied, which one are you going to choose to develop that particular topic? Okay, so here's your topic. Let's derive a thematic statement. So I'm just going to erase this for a sec. So our topic is the ways in which an individual's resilience is shaped by reconciliation. Okay, so let's write a thematic statement. Here's your really easy peasy formula to write thematic statement. Conflict plus choice equals consequences. Okay, so and I'm going to do Indian horse. Let's discuss Indian horse. So, what conflict does Saul Indian horse face where he has to make a choice that leads to certain consequences? And remember, it's resilience shaped by reconciliation. So, I would say let's just be specific here for a minute. So his conflict was, I would say, identity. You know, he had to reconcile himself to the fact that he was Indigenous, even though he suffered great persecution and harm and trauma at the residential school, and then he was discriminated against while he was playing hockey. He had to somehow come to some sort of reconciliation with response to his identity, okay? So let's put Indigenous identity and then hockey. What choice did he make? Well, first of all, he became when he was playing hockey, he became more brutal, right? He chose to be more brutal because of the way he was being treated. So violence, and then self-destruction through alcoholism, right? Through alcoholism. That he chose to do that. What were the consequences? He almost died. He had to go through therapy, and he had to face his demons by going back to the residential school, right?
He disconnected from his family.
Disconnection.
Friends. Himself. Culture.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
Okay, so now you've got this. Now, what sort of thematic statement, not thesis yet, so thematic statement. Remember, it has to be general enough that universally we can all identify with, but specific enough to the piece of literature. So, I'm running out of room. Too bad I don't have another one here. Okay.
We can.
Can I erase this? I'm going to erase this.
Yep.
All right.
We can also set up another one beside it.
That's fine. Okay, we'll just do this. I'll draw arrows, so hopefully you'll be able to see what we're doing. Okay, so now this is where the hard part comes in. Thematic statements are tough. They're tough to write. So, conflict, choice, consequences. So, let's start with this. Not suffering. I haven't taught in a while, so my word choice is really limited. The thingabob with the whatever. So identify in not unsettledness, conflict. I guess I could use conflict. Let's use trauma. We can use confusion. Let's do confusion first. We can change it later.
Okay.
Confusion in identity. Confusion regarding identity can cause a person to escape
It's almost like
their
escape
reality,
their struggle, or
escape their okay, I like that. Their struggle through
like destructive choices.
Destructive choices. Let's change this. Cause a person to escape their trouble and disengage from family and friends. However, and then what other choice does he make? Because he does this, but then he leads to another choice. Because of this, he chooses another choice. What does he choose to do? Face it.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it.
Yeah. Forgive it.
Forgive.
Reconnect with himself
Face.
and his truth.
Acknowledge.
Because really, it wasn't until he faced his truth
Right.
and acknowledged
Right.
his truth that he could seek the help.
Right. However, when forced to face the truth,
The truth of identity, right? Because it comes
The
back
truth regarding identity. Okay, now hang on. Let's do this. However, let's change this. When one
faces the truth.
can reconcile.
Oh, with the
Right?
truth.
Right?
Yes.
Themselves.
And it could be with their truth too. It doesn't even have to be
the
the truth.
Let's do his because we're talking
His.
about Saul.
Okay.
His truth. What happens when one can reconcile themselves with this truth?
He can reconnect with his identity and move forward.
And he becomes stronger because
Yeah.
remember your topic is resilience too.
Yes.
When one can reconcile himself with his truth, he may become more resilient. Resilience.
Oh, that's a hard one.
R-E-S-I-L. More resilient in life.
Ooh, let's read it.
Or resilient in life, or resilient regarding his truth. You could do that. Okay, that's a tough one because it's when you have a novel like that, it's tough to come up with a thematic statement. But just think if you're writing an essay around it, how much you can
write with
about
it and connect to it.
So if you can figure out a really good thematic statement to make into a thesis statement, you're set.
Because now your thesis connects your points that you will discuss in your essay.
And your first body paragraph, you're dealing with all the conflict that he has. So and it organizes itself beautifully. And then the second paragraph, you're talking about the choices that he makes. And then the third paragraph, you're talking about the consequences of that choice. So if you can come up with a really good thematic statement and then make it into a thesis statement, then you're set for your essay. But this is the hard part. And then making, it can be 2 sentences, try to keep it down to 1 sentence, but it can be true. But that's where you start mucking around and start moving things around and making it.
So let's read it again from the beginning.
Okay. Confusion regarding identity can cause a person to escape their struggle and disengage from family and friends. However, when one can reconcile themselves with his truth, he may become more resilient in life.
And the other thing too is disengage from family or friends. We could even say disengage from one's history and culture.
Exactly.
Like you could play around with the different pieces.
And you know what you could do too? You could just choose one and then just focus on that. So disengage with one's culture once you can reconcile. So even narrow it down even more, and it would still work as a really good essay. Because then you can talk about one specific conflict, the conflict he has with his culture. Right?
Yeah.
What does he choose because of that, and what's the consequence? So that would probably be an easier way to do it, just narrow it down even more to a specific conflict. Because I think in really good pieces of literature, your protagonist suffers a number of conflict, right? If it's a really good piece of literature. Because most really good pieces of literature, the author writes about how does the protagonist change from the beginning of the piece to the end of the piece and what do we learn from it. That's the whole reason. So if you could answer that question, that's your theme. What change takes place? What is the change? Sometimes it's not a good one. If you take a look at Macbeth, it's not a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be your thesis statement.
So that's your thematic statement.
Your thematic statement.
Okay, now we're going to start a new video for thesis.
Yeah.